So I'm going to let Mark Albertson, who's a SiliconANGLE journalist, he's going to moderate the panel. He's going to take over, and obviously this is a labour of love and quite a big project with so many panellists, and I'm sure he's going to do a fabulous job. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Pamela. I'm pleased to be here after power walking from Moscone and barely making it, so heated up and ready to go. Normally we have all the panelists introduce themselves, but because we have such a large panel tonight, I'm going to do the introductions and then we'll kick it off with the first question and let everybody chime in from there. And we've got a great panel. This is a fantastic group, as Pamela mentioned. Tonight we have John Linden, CEO of Mythical Games, and as I introduce you, just raise your hand. Rui Zhang, Vice President of Gumi, Inc. Randy Safe, co-founder and CEO of Lucid Site. Mickey Maher with Dapper Labs. Mickey. Mike Jones, helmsman in Circuit Studios. Sam Engelbart, co-founder and partner of Galaxy Digital. Yisul Cho, venture partner, FBG Capital. That's all right. And Jim Gatto, a partner with Shepard Mullen, our gracious host tonight. Okay, so let's get started. Let me just kind of open with kind of a more general question, and we've got kind of two subjects here: the impact of blockchain technologies, and then in the crypto gaming space, and then also digital collectibles. So we'll try to cover both fields and then allow time for questions before the end. When I was working on in preparation for this, one of the stories I came across talked about how the CEO of Binance had spoken recently about the potential positive impact that blockchain technologies can have on the gaming industry. So why don't we just kind of start with that? Do you agree with his statement on that? And what impact should blockchain have on gaming?
I'm going to pass it out.
Yeah. I agree. First of all, no, I think I'm formerly from the game industry with as a studio at Activision and at a mobile group. I think the biggest thing about blockchain is it's not that different, and crypto transactions are not that different than what we've been doing in gaming. Really, if you think about it, most games have had a virtual currency. Maybe it wasn't tokenized with kind of external liquidity, but a lot of it's been very, very similar. So I think it's very easy when there's a lot of blockchain tech to immediately go to gaming as a use case. I think the challenge we still have, and one thing we have to figure out is basically onboarding, right? So the second you mention a private key, you've pretty much lost your audience, at least in the mainstream media or mainstream gaming group. So I think that's the key right now is we have the concepts are the same, but the application needs to be very similar, or we're not going to get the adoption rates that we want to see.
Yeah, so I agree with everything that John just said. I think with blockchain, it seems to me obvious that it will have an impact on gaming. I think with any digital world, and as people increasingly spend more and more of their time in these digital worlds, the idea that a technology that enables the objects that you encounter and interact with in these worlds to be scarce and to be more easily traded, to be more valuable, I think is going to have a profound impact on the way games are made and what people do with the games, and then hopefully enable them to interact with these objects outside of the games as well in a way that they haven't before.
Yeah, I agree. Everybody on the panel is going to agree. But yeah, we have a game called MLB Crypto Baseball. We're actually rebranding it to MLB Champions, precisely to the point of that what the crypto is adding is a feature of digital scarcity to what would otherwise be I think wouldn't be a good game, right? Just collecting pictures or baseball cards digitally wouldn't be interesting if it was all sitting on a database. What the blockchain adds is true digital ownership, and what that basically means is that you can sell the stuff, or you can give it to your kids when you die. Everything digital you own is a license. There is no ownership digitally for the most part. You own your iPhone, but you don't own iOS. It's a license, it's a really crappy license that Apple changes on you all the time. And that's a one-way contract, and you can't sell it. You definitely can't do anything with it. With our properties, when somebody buys a Mike Trout player in our game, we and MLB all expect that person to be able to enjoy it, be able to give it away, or be able to sell it. That's what it's adding for our particular title.
I
I agree as well with all the comments. Yeah, it's really hard to disagree. So, I am working for the FBG, but at the same time I'm working for the Inside Devs, which is FNE for the blockchain games. So we analyze and then calculating the real-time revenue data for the blockchain games and also user analytics. So for example, I guess the people are talking about the mass adoption. So one of the reason is like a wallet and a lot of different crypto access and all those things. But I guess I was looking into the CryptoKitty data for the creating the funnel graph. Let's say the 100% is the total token holders as the potential user base, and then only 1.89% of the user actually the active user. So I think it's not only just the massive adoption is not coming because of the access to the crypto, but people who are already owns the CryptoKitty, they're not playing the games. I guess maybe we might need to find a different different challenges we are actually having as well. So that's what I wanted to add.
I disagree. I'm kidding.
Stole mine.
It just got kind of boring because everyone agrees. No, I do agree. I think from a higher level perspective, I think gaming is one of the areas that is like the first adopter of many technologies, whether it's AR, VR, or you go back to history, and I think blockchain will be no exception. I do think we'll see games that use blockchain more so than games that are on blockchain, where the games actually run, at least initially. But I do think that one of the biggest challenges right now is just making it easy. It's having a conversation with someone earlier before, and it feels like it's the internet in 1994, pre-Netscape, and it's kind of clunky. And I think we really need to get through that to make it more easily usable, and then kind of get off to the races from there.
I'm Mike Jones, and I happen to be having that conversation when we were talking about that. So, yeah, I agree, obviously. We make games that utilize the blockchain, but they are not DEX. So we are putting items on the blockchain. And I think what we're really going to see there happen is the opportunity for, as people, we learn through playing things. And so if we provide them the opportunity to learn how to do something new that they haven't encountered before, and it's easy and it's accessible and it's fun, people are just going to get it. But until that moment, when you're throwing private keys at them and using the language that crypto uses today, people get confused and scared and want to do it. But so it really comes down to providing that opportunity in a very transparent kind of way. The other thing it adds that hasn't been added, it hasn't been mentioned yet, is persistence. So having that persistence available for your games or your items, whatever that happens to be, and it could be valuable and create value for the player.
Yeah, agree with the statement, and especially agree with what Jim just explained. Actually, it's not gaming of change block. So it's actually the opposite. I think it's blockchain that will naturally choose gaming as one of the genres that start with, because as one of the panelists already explained, in the current gaming mobile or PC past gaming industry, there's really a virtual economy in the game. The gamers already got used to spend money on the virtual things, spend money to buy virtual things in the game. So now with blockchain, actually you can make it out of this closed economy becomes an open economy that enable all the users to actually really own the assets, but not only in the game, but actually all of the game.
Yeah, I think there's a few major points we haven't touched on as a panel, and I'll bring those up. So we created, we're Dapper Labs, we created CryptoKitties. CryptoKitties, by any measure, is the largest blockchain game to date. And really, the way we look at things as a company is gaming is traditionally a gateway to any new complicated technology. Games are fun, they're easy, they're engaging, and it allows, think about your iPhone, it allowed, at least in the early days, people to experience the iPhone for what it was made to be, all the controls, the touch screen, turning the screen, etc. So that accelerometer. But I think blockchain has the chance to really transform gaming. We've mentioned some of the reasons. verifiable scarcity, true ownership, persistence of the actual digital good, verifiable fairness, because the blockchain is transparent. One thing we didn't touch on as a panel, which is, I think, probably the most important thing, the most interesting thing to me, is the blockchain can enable, it can become a platform. What we call it internally is composability. You might think of it as extensibility or interoperability, but essentially what happened with CryptoKitties is 40 to 50 developers have now built apps on top of CryptoKitties that allow users to bring their kitties into those games and do things with them. And that allows developers to make money, and it's riskless. So if you built an app or game on top of Facebook, app on top of Twitter, we all know what happened there. They changed the rules, they shut it down, they pulled a lot of apps off the stores and put a lot of companies out of business. With the blockchain, the composability of it makes it so that someone can build on top of your experience, and they can do it risk-free because the actual original creator of the software has no recourse to prevent them from doing so.
We get to where we're done. Oh, there's the other mic. Okay. Why don't you guys hang on? Okay. Well, let's switch to a different topic, which may not get quite as much agreement. And with so much interest in the blockchain space and what's happening in cryptocurrencies, obviously there's a nascent industry with smaller firms that are building good businesses around it, but the big players are circling too. Facebook is apparently interested in issuing a stable coin. They're also interested in gaming as well. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Microsoft, of course, has the Xbox ecosystem, and I believe they're quietly accepting crypto payments, if I'm not mistaken. So what do you see transpiring with the current market forces, big players like Facebook, Microsoft? What do you think they might end up doing, if anything?
Maybe I can talk a little bit. No, I find them very, very fascinating. I think if we still have to look at, there's blockchain as a theory and there's blockchain as a tech, and I think we got to kind of evaluate those separately to some degree. The idea that everything is decentralized and no one can change it and it's all immutable and all that is interesting, but I don't think that's the near-term vision for a lot of stuff, especially not in games. I mean, every game that I'm aware of that's had a big, huge success financially, they have some type of, there's a group of people behind that, right? There's a visionary behind that. And I think if you go completely decentralized from tomorrow, if you took World of Warcraft and you said, hey, it's decentralized, go. You know, you can't ever change it. It wouldn't have the staying power. So I think there is kind of a nice correlation between having certain things centralized still and having other things decentralized, right? Like proof of ownership and authenticity. So I think the fact that Facebook and Line and Microsoft Azure now has a blockchain, I think that's a great thing for the industry to kind of move forward from a tech perspective. I think a lot of it's going to come down to how they implement it, right? Like what decentralized theories, or what's their view of decentralization, right? Is it a series of nodes? I mean, how does that work, right? So I think it's really how they use it rather than kind of what the fact that they're in the space.
I mean, I can't begin to guess exactly what Facebook is going to ultimately do with blockchain, and I mean, I guess I can guess, but I really don't know what blockchain is or what Facebook's going to do with blockchain and with crypto and gaming. I think we all know, and there's a lot out there around what Facebook is doing with instant games, and that seems to be a very big push of theirs. I think we also know that they are trying to reinvent themselves now as a company that cares immensely about privacy and about, you know, ownership of your personal data. Immensely. They are really sorry, and they're going to fix it all. So I have no idea. I mean, I remember I was investing a lot in VR back when Facebook started to make their big push in that area, and you know, if we had tried to guess then what they were going to do and time it and everything else, there were a lot of people who did. I think they made a lot of mistakes. I think obviously they're going to do. I'm sure they're going to do what they say they're going to do on the instant gaming side, and they've launched that. I think everything else, we just have to assume that. You know, people talk about the 35-person team that Facebook has dedicated to blockchain, I mean, that's tiny relative to their resources at Facebook. I do know enough about some of their ideas, and they're going to be, I think it's public that they're largely focusing on, on their messaging apps and on some form of a payment or currency inside of it. I mean, whatever that turns out to be. So they have all of the pieces that will be relevant to gaming and that will matter in the games that they ultimately create. But that's really about all we can say about them right now, I think.
Yeah, I'm with Sam, and I also agree with John on this front. Like, I couldn't guess what exactly Facebook's going to do at this moment. I think there's cryptocurrency as money, i.e. Bitcoin, stablecoin, and then there's blockchain as a technology that can create what's called a non-fungible token in your game. Now, all that means it's a unique, one-of-a-kind item that you can prove is one of a kind. And they get all kind of conflated in the crypto space because Ethereum is both a money and EOS is both a money and a blockchain technology, virtual machines. But they're kind of different discussions, right? So in our games, for example, we will accept in going forward regular US dollars in our games. Now all the items in the games are connected to the blockchain. But we launched the game last year, and you had to buy Ethereum, you had to install MetaMask, you had this huge funnel of steps to actually get people on the game. So we're kind of unique in the sense that we've, us along with CryptoKitties have had a live launch and seen what this funnel looks like. Benny and I have had many conversations about that funnel and how brutal it is getting somebody to install MetaMask. And in our game, 75% of the players had never owned Ethereum before, which is very different from like most blockchain games. They were a fan of, whatever the blockchain is, and then they got into that game. We're kind of the opposite. Like, these are baseball fans, just sort of run-of-the-mill baseball collectors from the 80s who are like, well, this is cool, a new form of digital baseball cards. Okay, what do I do first? Go to Coinbase, buy Ethereum. Okay, wait 2 weeks. Okay, now I got to install MetaMask, and MetaMask gives you all these weird browser extension things. So what we've realized through that, and we wouldn't have realized it if we didn't actually do it. And John's lucky that he just realized it off the bat that it was a series of steps where we lost users. But the reality is we polled the audience of our players, and most of them were like, "Look, we just want to buy the stuff and we want to own it. We don't care if we're using Ethereum to buy it or not." So that's our take, and I think it's going to be the same thing with the Facebook stablecoin. There has to be a reason why that coin is better than just your credit card.
I guess about the Facebook, I have no idea, but I guess for the Samsung and SK, which is the two largest enterprise in Korea, so right before I flew here 2 days ago, last week, I had a dinner with the people inside the Samsung and SK, and they are both very big in the blockchain space. And then, so I've been talking with them, and then they are not just doing it just this year. It's been, I've been working with some people for 2 years. They've been testing a lot of different technology, talking to a lot of different other companies, and then they're also curious about what Facebook is working on, but yeah. And then, so we actually, the other days, we've been talking about are we too early? Because actually Samsung already launched their product, so it's going to be chasing after the 130 different countries. So then, it's I guess it's a little bit too late to think about are we too early to jump in? But I guess we've been discussing over the dinner, and then actually we've been talking about Stephen Jobs, how he started the App Store, which is like he shared the idea of 83, which is like he built App Store at the end of after 20 years. I guess some people jumping in the market because the market is there already, but some people actually creating the market and shaping the market and then growing the market as well. So I guess with that story, we already decide to bet in, and then I guess everything else we have to do now is the growing and then creating the market. It might take a long time, but I guess we already bet in, right?
So we do work with some of those big companies, so I'm going to tread lightly here. But what I'll say is that I think relevant to this panel is that I don't think people should necessarily fear those big companies. I think that we talk about technology companies, they're good at technology. To make good games, you need to be a game company, you need to have game DNA, you need to have game background. And I think the companies that are succeeding so far and likely will continue to succeed are game companies who are using blockchain, not technology companies who are trying to become game companies.
Yeah, I don't have that's well said. I don't have a lot to add to that. The only thing is that I don't think it matters who you are. As a big game company or like Facebook or Microsoft or Amazon or whoever they are, I think they're all going to be exploring blockchain and what is possible with this and what it's a big space. It's something that it's not just about NFTs and tokens. It's about what else can you do with this. And so I think everybody's going to be exploring it. It's just going to see something. And then again, I don't think it's something we should be frightened of. I look forward to seeing what people come up with because I'm excited about what this presents to us as an opportunity.
Okay, so regarding Facebook, what they are trying to do, I think they're generally trying to discover how they can utilize blockchain to transfer some part of their business. For example, recently, I believe a lot of you already noticed that Mark Zuckerberg talked about how blockchain may be utilized to solve the login credential problems. So I think, and I believe 1 or 2 years ago, actually Mark Zuckerberg also mentioned that Facebook initially is coming from a so-called decentralized. Everybody wants to, should be involved in the whole social network. But now, after the business become, more and more success, actually become more centralized. So he made the comment that should come back to decentralization. And so I think basically blockchain can be utilized in different parts of the whole business. And talking about specifically about the messenger, Gumi is a gaming company, so actually 2017, we actually explored the potential of the messenger-based instant game. And it is a good platform. You think about 1.2 billion users on that platform. Everybody thinks that's a business opportunity. But eventually, when they launch it, it feels it's hard to monetize. There's no, because it's a casual game, it's a very short play time, low retention rate. So the monetization is horrible. So maybe blockchain can open another type of monetization method for them. That could be one of the areas they discovered. And generally talking about all the bigger players, especially the gaming companies, if you look at the history of the gaming industry, every time when there's a new technology comes out, no matter it's maybe not only technology, but also the monetization model. In the past, the people initially doing primary game, selling games, and later charged by time, and later free to play. None of the times actually the big players is the first mover. They will only monitor the market, keep looking at what happened, and when they see, oh, that's a thing, because they're big enough to just come in later. And for all the startups, actually, that's a chance for you. It's a blank, then no one wants to challenge it, and the big players have a lot of element to actually prevent them to take the challenge. There's too much things that they can lose for doing that. But smaller startups, you have a lot of opportunities there. And the big players, when they come in, actually, either they work together with you, they buy you, or they copy the model that you're doing. But that's the opportunities I see.
So I'm going to try to straddle the line here between being honest and treading lightly. I'll just start talking and see how I do. So this could apply to any of the incumbents, but since Facebook has announced a blockchain initiative, we're talking about Facebook, let's just take them for example. Facebook had a metacurrency in the past. There was a centralized metacurrency called Facebook credits. It rose and died pretty quickly, okay? So incumbents, Facebook, whatever. If you think that these folks are going to build a completely decentralized blockchain, which a blockchain is decentralized, you're crazy. Like what they're gonna build is something where they control all the nodes, which then it's basically servers, it's just branded differently. So there's a distinct difference to what the blockchain offers versus what an incumbent would build. An incumbent is not going to lose control of their audience by building a completely decentralized system. And if they were to build a true blockchain, it would cannibalize their business, and there would just be too much risk to their traditional business to do so. So really what I think is they want to be public about this, get the PR, build something so it doesn't look like they're getting caught with their pants down. But in reality, it's just going to be a bunch of servers which they own or them and their friends own that they brand a blockchain, which is no more than what Facebook credits was 8 years ago. So I don't know. I don't know if I treaded lightly, but that's my opinion.
I'm not sure. That was a boom.
All right, well, let's, I want to make sure we also cover digital collectibles to some degree here. And Randy, you kind of alluded to this in regards to, at times, the process can be cumbersome. So, if you want a digital collectible, you've got to download a browser plugin, figure out, how to buy the digital currency, open a wallet, transfer your crypto into the wallet, and then maybe buy the collectible. It's a bit of a cumbersome process. I think we all realize that, but what's it going to take to change that? Where do you see this going, say, in the next year or so in terms of maybe this process, and perhaps not just for digital collectibles, but for a lot of other uses might become less unwieldy?
You want to start with that?
Yeah, I mean, I can just speak to our strategy. So by far the biggest success story in crypto from a consumer-facing front is Coinbase. By far, they have the most users. That's how most people acquire their first Bitcoin or first Ethereum. Coinbase is just a bank. It's just a centralized organization where your stuff is held, and you have the ability. You can pull your Bitcoin out whenever you want. You can pull your Ethereum, and now they host tons and tons of different coins at this point. But it's the ability to pull out your coins that actually gives Coinbase its legitimacy. And people hate this in crypto, but it's a lot like a bank. The fact that you can go to Bank of America and pull out all your money means you probably won't. You'll probably leave your money at Bank of America, and occasionally you'll pull some out when you need it. That's the approach we're taking with our MLB title and our space title, CSC, which is a bit of a take off EVE Online. Our own sort of take on EVE Online with digital ownership, is that as long as we give the consumer the ability to remove the items and do all the steps if they want to, install MetaMask, do a peer-to-peer sale, sell our, we love it when people sell our items on the other third-party marketplaces like OpenSea, because that adds legitimacy to the fact that we can't stop you from reselling the item. And that's really what it means for a lot of people. Digital ownership really comes down to the ability that we can't change the ability of them to resell it or give it to their kids when they die or all the other things you do. But we definitely are taking a stance that the first time user experience, this is something that I came from the mobile space. You lived and died by the first time user experience. Person installs your app with their first walkthrough tutorial. It's a funnel and you lose people every step of the way. That first experience has to be smooth, and it cannot involve installing a browser plugin and opening a Coinbase account.
The rest of the panel, go ahead.
I think that's great point, Vinny. I think the key that we've been looking at obviously is similar to where we're essentially looking at to where, I guess the way I'd kind of go back to is I come from the mobile space as well. So we had a game last year called Marvel Strike Force, and Marvel Strike Force, they did tremendous amounts of numbers in revenue from literally 5% of the audience base, right? So I think the game did nearly $170 million last year from 5%. So that means 95% of the players of our game never interfaced with the commerce side of the game. They never went to the store, they never purchased anything from the store. And I think we need to treat that kind of similarly, right? To where you go in and play a game, you're playing the game, and probably what's gonna happen initially is 90% or 95% probably aren't gonna care too much about the blockchain, the true digital ownership, all the things we talk about, right? It's going to be a similar type mechanic. And so what I think we have to do as game developers and game publishers is we have to let people play, because those 95%, the reason we did it with Marvel is they still drive the economy. They still are a very important part of that ecosystem, even if they're not paying us $1. But if we burden them and took them through that process at the beginning, we might have lost them as players, right? So I think we have to address that the same way, to where you go in and play the game, 95% might be never interact with the digital ownership, but it's that 5% that does. So kind of, I think, a similar strategy to where you onboard them and you bring them in when they need to. So that's kind of the way we view it.
I don't have too much to add. I guess we sort of were talking about a couple different things. One is the onboarding process or bringing them into the process of buying and owning these items. And I completely agree that just needs to be easy and painless and something that people who've never heard of blockchain can understand and do, and it'll probably look a lot like other logins that you're experiencing in your digital life. And then there's the question of the custody and who's holding on to the stuff that you buy once you buy it. And I do think it's going to be important to people to know that their stuff is safe, but most of them are not going to feel a need to hold on to most of their items themselves. So I guess in that way it is like a bank, and once you have an established way to really understand where your items are held and that they're secure and that the company holding them is trusted, then I think most people are going to just be fine with that. And then there will be people that some of these objects and things start to, even now are incredibly valuable and expensive and so on. And there will be people who choose to participate in that and do decide to custody them themselves. And that's, I think Randy's point about pulling them out, to put it that way. But yeah, people will make that choice. Most of them will choose to allow the custody to be with the game for most of the time, I would say.
Yeah, actually, all things you mentioned actually make a lot of sense. Obviously, the key management wallet, how to actually, without going through the changes, but allow users to enter into the blockchain gaming, crypto game industry field without understanding exactly what they are playing on blockchain. That's one of the key. But another thing I want to mention is bring in the previous gaming experiences from mobile, PC, or whatever onto blockchain. That won't work, in my opinion. So blockchain doesn't design for those type of experiences. So you have to think about what blockchain can offer you different with others. And if you want to do something on top of it, you have to create something that really utilize all the features that blockchain gives you that other platforms cannot give it to you. If you do create a game, yes, you solve the easy way to log in, easy way to play all the things, but you can also do it in a current platform already, and the gamers already got used to it. They were actually, as I said, if they don't, the 95% of the gamers, they don't care about whether it's blockchain or not. That means they don't care about whether it's a true ownership, whether I can trade it outside of the game. Actually, what they care about is the real entertainment that they experience in the game. So the features that what Dash explained, scarcity, or true ownership, and fairness, provable fairness, that could be several features that you should consider when you create a content.
And to your point, that's what, when we created Kitties, we had a bunch of ideas, and one of them was, just collectibles, but the team was pretty adamant. And to be clear, Crypto Kitties was an experiment. It was 5-6 people, Benny, who was in the room, worked on it. And we launched it to test if we could drive common, normal, everyday users to the blockchain. And we did. But what really made it cool was not just that you could own the kitties, it was that you could own the kitties, but you had some agency over them where you could list your kitty to be bred to. And that game mechanic, simple game mechanic, changed everything. Like there were games or experiences that came before us were collectibles. But just the simple breeding mechanic where the ownership meant something, and something in terms of a game experience is really what made it blow up. To the second point, nothing we're doing or talking about up here matters really until onboarding and all this friction is fixed. It's truly preventing all of us from doing more business, getting more users, having more notable games. So I'll say that we at Dapper Labs are fixing that problem. We're launching something to fix that problem within the next few weeks. And if you want to learn more about it, you can go to dappermeet.com. It's about all I can say, but we've realized this problem and we're fixing it.
Good. No, I mean, to come back to the beginning of the topic, the first time I bought cryptocurrency years ago, that was the first thing that came up. I'm like, until this process becomes easier, this is not going to take off. I think that is one of the benefits we have as game developers, though, is the opportunity to make that happen. And by doing that in a way that's fun and entertaining and transparent, so you don't even realize it's happening. What we've discovered is most users, gamers, don't even understand what you're talking about when you say true ownership. It's not a thing. You know, they play video games all their lives. They, of course I own this thing, I bought it. And it's like, well, no, you don't. You know, it's in this walled garden. And trying to explain that to somebody is difficult. And I think what's going to happen is all of us up here are going to continue working on that problem. We're going to come up with a way that people are just going to realize it someday. You know, what the difference is between working within a walled garden and truly owning your assets. Yeah, that's really all I have to add. So.
May I ask one question about the true ownership? Because I was having a lunch with my friend who was super negative about the blockchain game space. I've been in the space since 2015, and I'm definitely supporting the space. But I wanted to answer the question, like, for example, in Korea, the NHN Entertainment, which is one of the largest game company in Korea, which is doing the blockchain project I've been advising, and they are running 90% of the social gambling side in Korea, which owns the cash, and then that cash, it has the third-party black market. You can actually cash out, and then you can also, there is the game item market in Korea, though it's not like a blockchain base, but so you can still sell and buy, right? So it's the ownership of the item, ownership of the game points is already been existing. And then I really want someone else to answer to me about the true ownership, because I know.
I mean, for me, true ownership is, can you sell it? I mean, that's a seminal thing. Is, you know, you can sell your Counter-Strike Go, you know, your Counter-Strike Go skin on a gray market, and you're basically selling your login, and that exists, so people want to do it. But with these games, it's a first principle. Like, it's a first principle that when you buy Mike Trout, and he has a great year, and next year it might go up in value, you get to sell it, you get to realize the value appreciation of that item.
I would just, oh, sorry.
No, please.
I just want to say, so can you sell it is one way to measure it, I guess, but I actually think it's, can someone take it away from you? I think that's a more important measure of, well, whether they want to or they don't want to, but you can sell a lot of things that you don't actually own. And if the person buying it doesn't care that they're not going to own it either, then they'll pay you for it. But if somebody else can take it away from you, I think that's really the measure.
Yeah, it's also, can I give it to someone? Not just sell it, but if I, you know, it's the peer-to-peer. I have a CryptoKitty, you have a CryptoKitty, we can exchange it without any money being exchanged. I own it, I can gift it. My kid can get one and come home and gift it to me. But even further and even more than that, not only can you sell it, but you can use it, like what we saw with the Kittyverse, is you can use it in other ways to generate revenue and make money. You can build businesses out of it. There's something called kitty races, and you take your cat and you race another cat in a race game and you can gamble on it. So you're taking your kitty, because you own it, outside of CryptoKitties. We can't do anything about that, and some other developer created a game called Kitty Races, and I can wager against another CryptoKitty holder, and whoever has the fastest cat, based on their algorithm or whatever, wins the pot. So it's just not selling it, it's actually owning it and being able to do what you want with it.
Can I have just one more quick thing, just some of that I've been thinking a lot about, but so I don't know how much true ownership of digital objects matters in games right now. It's interesting, and we're gonna play around with all of this, and it's gonna be a thing that we start to experience in games, and there's definitely gonna be new revenue models and everything associated with that. But I think we actually have to look out a number of years into a time where we start to imagine, like, when we are all spending more of our time in these digital worlds than in the physical worlds, and when we are investing or being asked to invest tremendous amounts of our money, of our energy, of ourselves into the digital objects that we start to accumulate to define ourselves, that's where the ownership thing is going to really matter. And I think we're going to continue to see a ceiling where if you can't really own these things, and if you can't rely on being able to take them with you and have them be part of you as the lines are blurred between your digital and your physical self, then people are only going to invest so much into that process. And I think that's where it'll start to get interesting.
Yeah, it basically comes down to like exactly what you're saying. I'm looking forward to working with all of you guys and creating the metaverse. You know, that space where we all go and hang out and do other things and transaction in different ways. And I think I get the impression that everyone up here has that idea, right? That these things are going to be more than just, I mean, right now they're CryptoKitties, right? But someday they're going to be more than that. And we all have that vision of having things that are more than that. And part of our identity, who we are, the things that represent who we are in this space.
I mean, I hear you on that. I think the one thing I'll challenge a little bit is I think the item interoperability in any real way is like a decade off. I mean, I think it's so far off. I mean, the one analogy I use is that, you know, so coming from Activision, we had 5 game studios on Call of Duty, right? We had 5 different studios around the world. We had a hard time getting a soldier from one studio into a game of another studio for the same franchise, right? It's just a real pain to do. It's hard to do, right? And that's within the same company. So I think one thing I think we have to be a little realistic. I think you're right. It's the goal, the Ready Player One, all that stuff. It's definitely where we want to go. But I think we're really, really, really ways far off in doing anything creative. Like the one I always hear about too is around Borderlands. And would it be cool if I could get this gun I have in Borderlands and put it into Call of Duty? Do you realize the physical impossibility of that to do it anytime cool is there, because that gun looks like that gun in Borderlands, not because of the 3D mesh. It looks like it because of the shader technology and the lighting and the way they get it to look like cell shaded, right? So you take that gun out of Borderlands, you put it in Call of Duty, it's no longer the same gun, right? Even if you have the same assets. So I think that's one thing we have to be a little cautious of. I think you guys have done Dapper, you guys have done a great job of kind of with those experiments, but I think in terms of any real mass adoption, I think it's a long way off. I do think the true ownership, here's the thing I get excited about the true ownership though, it is partially liquidity, right? It can become a universal basic income. I mean, there's a lot of things that happen, right, off of once that appears. The thing I'm mostly excited about is the fact of, I don't think any of us understand, what's that player behavior? You know, like I said, using that free-to-play example, 94% or 95% of your people don't pay. What happens to the player behaviors, and what happens to the lifetime value of a customer that's been grinding on an object or craft something new and somebody offers them $25 for it? What happens to that? Do they take the money and run? Probably not. From our experiences, yeah, they're probably going to reinvest that, and now they become a more paying user, right? That's the things I get excited about, is we suddenly kind of bring people in a longer term, because right now, honestly, it's a one-way street. It's players are paying game developers for personal satisfaction. That's really what they're buying right now, is they're buying personal satisfaction. That's cool. I'm all for personal satisfaction. That's very cool. But I think it's not a great return. And I think what we can do is we can start shifting, and it'll be small shifts, but they can be very large. I mean, we're playing in a $140 billion industry. So those small shifts can be billions of dollars very quickly to get some of these players to become paying users. And they're becoming a paying user because it's not just dropping money. They can earn that. And it just changes that ecosystem. So to me, that's what I get excited about. Liquidity is definitely part of it, but just changing how players interact and how those economies work over time, that's, to me, is the exciting part, you know?
So sure. Just a short point. So I think for blockchain, the provable is more important than the ownership than fairness, because until the whole blockchain, the game itself become a full decentralized, it's not operated by a single gaming company, then the ownership you have on the assets only worth something in that game. When you go out of the game, just like what John just explained, you bring some assets to another game. First, another game may not accept it. Second, it won't work when you burn into it. And just like you have a ticket of a theme park, if that theme park shut down, the ticket doesn't mean anything. Yes, when they have it, it's an asset. When they don't have it anymore, it's not an asset anymore. So, but what is more important is the fairness and provable, so that when people telling you this is one out of 100, there's only 100 on this game have the same item. and you can prove it, then that's something that means to you because there's a provable scarcity that you can show to anyone, and that's how it works that you can trade with others. Because people know there's only 100, and if I want it, I have to buy from the market, not wait until someone copy it and give it to me.
Sam, did you have a comment?
Well, actually, just as it's interesting with a panel this big, it's like you hear something 5 minutes ago.
I'm right there.
But so something John was saying though, it just occurred to me that I think it's important also that when we're talking about true ownership and in-game objects and all that, it's very easy to fall right into thinking about the model of in-game items that are top-down created by the publisher, and oh wow, now I can own this thing that somebody else made, and oh, I can sell it to somebody. But I think we also have to remember to include in this discussion what happens when every player of the game or inhabitant of a digital world becomes a maker of the objects that they're interacting with too. And this, I mean, we were talking about this a little bit with CryptoKitties, but so even in a world where, let's assume that we think interoperability doesn't happen, and we're in the walled garden world that we've been talking about or become used to. Like you can look at things like the economies in a virtual world like Second Life, and compare it to the ARPU in a virtual world like I don't know, you can take Fortnite. And it's interesting because Fortnite has 250 million users and they're generating $2.5 billion of revenue, or were, and that sounds tremendous, but then you take a world like Second Life, which is 15 years past its peak, they have 50,000 really activated daily users, and they're generating a GDP in that world of $750 million. So that like on an average revenue per user, they're dwarfing what people are spending in a world like Fortnite. And so we have to start to think about like, how will ownership in some new and different way impact people's decision to really create and interact with the digital world in a new way? And what's that gonna do?
So just really quickly, so John, the user that's grinding away gets $25 worth of stuff, sells it, and then comes back because he's fully engaged. We actually, we have a term for that. It's the user joint venture. And we have a term for that, Dapper, because it's something that we think is unique to blockchain gaming, or relatively unique. That doesn't really exist in any other gaming format but blockchain gaming. So one of the key points of why to build a game on the blockchain is the joint venture with the user.
Yeah. Okay, good points. Yeah, good discussion. I want to make sure we allow time for those who are here tonight to ask questions of this great panel. So let me come out in the audience here with the mic because we want to make sure we get you on the stream here. And do you have the first question? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the panelists. I'm from a blockchain perspective. So there's a spectrum from like, there's a native blockchain-based DApp game, and also they're just like traditional gaming company use blockchain as one feature. Like from your guys' perspective, do you see obvious limitation of the absolute native DApp? And if so, what would be the best use case? Like what's the ratio for blockchain plus the game? Thank you.
Okay, who wants to take that one first? Anybody want to? They're all pointing at each other. We have 8 people here.
I'll just, it just depends on the game. CryptoKitties doesn't work unless it's entirely on the blockchain. Right. It just doesn't work. There's other games that we have that we're thinking about building that work in the other way that you're talking about, where just the economy or the NFTs or digital items live on the blockchain, but everything else happens off-chain. It really depends on the game, but I think in any gaming genre or any gaming space, what you have to understand is blockchain isn't just something to slap into a game. It's not going to work. Just like if you're slapping competitive gaming or player versus player into a single player game, it just never works. So when you're building a blockchain game, you have to think about all of these things from the ground up and build around the blockchain instead of adding the blockchain later. At least that's my opinion and our opinion.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. I think it's exactly right. It depends on the game. There's certain games that'll always do that. Just like with mobile games, there's certain games that you you can run without Unity and run it natively, and there's other ones that you want big game engines for. I mean, it just really depends on the game. I think the biggest challenge that we've seen is actually my favorite term right now that I've seen in blockchain is a side chain of one node, which is basically a database. But that's what's happening right now is there's so much data in these games, right? These games have so much data. It's just almost impossible to put all that data out there without going broke, right? So you have to almost compare it to, at some point, if you're not getting the feature, the game's not designed, like CryptoKitties is designed perfectly for being on the chain and running through smart contracts, and it's designed for that.
And to be fair, we crashed the chain
Exactly.
very
quickly.
Yeah, very soon. So.
But imagine
We're on
if
the
you
wrong
did that.
chain.
Yeah.
Talk to my CTO.
But I think that's right. I think a lot of games are going to have to use that because there's just no way, and there's no really real reason to put every move and every attribute on the chain unless it's a very specific type of game that needs that, right? So I think that's what it's going to come down to.
Yeah, I think you could almost say that if you're even asking yourself that question, then it means that the blockchain, it like piece of it is not really intrinsic to it. And so the answer is probably almost always when you ask the question, like more game, less blockchain.
Mhm.
Okay, question. This gentleman here.
Good day, pleasure. My question is really in general around the new mechanics that are being introduced from the leveraging the blockchain and the scarcity aspect of it. Because one thing me and some of my friends have been looking at is the ability of using that scarcity as well as the depletion of what's existing to actually change the entire mechanics of what the gameplay might look like. Because let's say you only have 3 moves, but you're going to use each of your moves out your pocket one time. And as you burn those, it changes your game from being like that immediate game you're playing to, oh, what moves would I be able to use in the future given the fact that I've burned and I'm depleting the existence of the possible moves or possible options of gameplay in the future. So what are some of the other mechanics that you guys have been seeing that are uniquely positioned with scarcity and depletion being implemented?
Who wants to take it again?
So one thing we did with our game that I don't think would have really worked before blockchain is we tie it to real events. So if Mike Trout hits a grand slam, that actually augments your collectible, that augments, therefore, the scarcity of it and the value. Historically, there's never been a way to memorialize the long tail of sporting events. Winning the division championship or something was never memorialized, but that may mean a lot to a particular fan. So blockchain allows you to create, if you have a brand with affinity or something people actually care about, it allows you to create real-time augmentations to the collectability, which then becomes immutable. So, we can never create another 2018 MLB crypto. Like that's locked into the blockchain. Those are being resold. In December, they were selling for $5. Now leading into the baseball season, they're reselling for about $25. That's not to us, that's the value appreciation of the collectibles. I don't think a lot of it has to do with the fact that people go back and say, oh, I remember that home run, or I remember that grand slam.
Why couldn't you have that blockchain? I'm just kind of curious.
Well, because we can always go back and change it. We can't go back and relive 2018, but if it was, say, sitting on a database and we said, yeah, there's 300 Mike Trouts, how would you even verify it? The blockchain allows, not every player does this, but allows the people who do care, who are knowledgeable, to then go on Ethereum and do the exploration of the blockchain and say, oh, I can actually see exactly to a T the number that was minted in 2018.
You can't increase the ROS.
So if you have your NoSQL database or whatever's running your game, and you're like, I promise there's this many Pokemon, Go Pikachus out there. Well, I mean, how good is that promise? What happens when that company changes ownership? Right? It gets in, they can just change the rules. We can't change that. 2018 is done. There's 155,000 2018 MLB cryptos. That will be all it will ever be, and we'll never actually sell them again. Everybody who sells them will be the current owners.
Just one comment on what you just mentioned. Actually, we do investment to invest all the venture companies, but I like what you mentioned about burning. So now when people talking about collectibles, you just own it and trade it. But actually in the game, if you really use items, you should spend it.
Yeah.
And items you can have a lifetime, and after you use it several times, you can burn it. Actually, that creates a better economy than what you're doing now. Basically now it's just all the assets being created and accumulated without spending it. That's really I don't think it's gonna work for a long time.
Okay, we only have about 2 minutes left here, so let's go ahead and ask one more question.
Okay, I was actually a judge at the Blockchain Connect in London just a month ago. So the most trendy terms in Europe or European blockchain community is don't tell people you're a blockchain game, okay? Just let people play. So in this trend that people started, developers, is basically people should be playing games just like mobile games. Who cares underneath a PayPal or this or that? What do you guys think that need to happen to let the player not bear the bad reputation of the scamming natures created by people in the blockchain gaming?
Okay, who wants to take that one? Go briefly.
I mean, I think the key is releasing a great game.
I don't think there's anything blockchain can add to a game to make it succeed, period. If your game is terrible without blockchain, it's gonna be terrible with blockchain. I mean, to me, that's really what it comes down to. You still have to have core game loops. You still have to have a good economy. You still have to have a world that people want to play in. Blockchain is not gonna fix that. I think it's gonna augment that or enhance that. We kind of say it's not a revolution, it's an evolution. And I think that's where we need to go, is that blockchain will create an evolution of gameplay, not a revolution, right? So if your game's not good without blockchain, it's definitely not going to be good with. So I think that's the first
My question
thing.
is more how to make it seamless for the users to not experience open up the wallet forever to go through that process.
Well, I think we're most of us are talking through that right now, is in terms of like, it's really about kind of hiding that experience, right? Onboarding them when they need to be onboarded, not from the very beginning, right? I think if you onboard them from the beginning, you're pretty much dead in the water in terms of going mass adoption, right? I don't know I don't know who sent a transaction, even from Coinbase, which is by far the biggest consumer, but who sent a transaction to a wallet and then held their breath for 3.5 minutes while it showed up, right? It's just not a great experience yet for consumers to do that. So I think you have to bring them on when they're ready and when they want to do that, and I think that's what a lot of us are saying that.
I think a real key is that 5% of the users who are interested in this do want to do everything
That's right.
with MetaMask, and those are the 5%. Those are your core users that give validity to everybody else. So when I give the example of knowing how many MLB cryptos we minted in 2018, the vast majority of our players aren't going to do the block exploration to actually look that up. But the fact that somebody can do it and then post to Reddit, yep, they're not lying, then it validates it for everybody else. I think it's a super key, and I think if we kind of if we kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater here, that's going to be a mistake as well. It absolutely, you cannot alienate that 5% of core crypto users. They will live and die by your game.
Yeah, you're right, that would be a mistake. I would equate it to like free-to-play games. Free-to-play games, you cater to payers and you cater to players, right? Crypto games are no different. You can cater to your crypto heads or your crypto audience while also servicing and catering to your just normal everyday player who doesn't necessarily want to experience crypto or doesn't care that it's the blockchain. So you could do both, and you could do both effectively.
We saw, just to really drive home how impatient people are and how important finding some way to build a relatively seamless experience. We saw this talk earlier today with a guy who's at Facebook building instant games, and it was like, he said, once you get past a load time on that instant game of more than a couple of seconds, it's like you start losing 10% of your audience every second that every additional second that it takes to load a game. And this is the thing that we're talking about, like 8 seconds, right? So if you start, that's how bad it is if you're making people go through these crazy processes with all this.
Very true. Well, an hour goes by pretty fast. We're at the end of our time, but please give this outstanding panel a round of applause for this.